Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English Champion, another episode for you. It seems like I keep hearing and reading the same topics over and over again, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but it does seem like people just don't get it. And so the two topics I keep hearing about are technology at school and reading problems. And yet again today, another article has come out that is about the problem of students' reading abilities or willingness to read at school. So as long as people keep talking about it, I guess I'll have to keep talking about it. I am going to add a couple new things here today that I haven't discussed before. But if you're interested in some of my previous ideas, I have recorded several. Go back to a couple podcasts ago where I talked about the fact that reading problems were indicative of the systemic problems at universities. That one was a good one. My online discussion podcast was covered some reading ability problems. There's been several, but a new article just came out today, so I thought I'd share it with you, and we'll go through it because people just don't get it. Parents, kids, teachers, administrators, none of them seem to get it. So we're going to go through it again, and we'll see if people decide to learn at some point. We'll see. This one from Teen Vogue came out just today. This is Wednesday. And I don't normally read Teen Vogue, but it was it was linked on another news website, and so that brought me here. And like I said, there are a few things I have discussed before, but there's a couple other things in here that I haven't. So I'd like to share it with you. The title is called "College Students Not Reading is an Issue." So teachers are adjusting how classes look. So the teachers adjusting part is what caught my eye and thought, okay, what are these teachers up to? And are they using good ideas or not so good ideas to deal with this problem? So let's take a look and we'll see what they say. When Alden Jones taught her first back in person college class during the pandemic, something surprising happened. She says, "Here I am teaching the same class I've taught for 10 years, using the same book and asking the same questions, and my students were dead silent." She teaches literature and creative writing at a private liberal arts college. Then she says, "I would ask easier questions." Silent. So I was like, okay, I know it's not me and I know it's not the book, so it must be you. Like, what's going on here? It might be you and it might be the book. Who knows? Maybe the book needs to be changed. Maybe it doesn't work anymore. Maybe you're not presenting it well enough. Who knows? I know she says it's worked in previous years, but different classes are different. Different years are different. So you might need to just try new stuff. But yes, in the last 10 years, there is something different going on here. And so she goes through, the questioning of, well, why might that be? She says the possible reasons were complicated. In part, likely shell shock from COVID. As I keep saying, it's not COVID. All of this was happening long before COVID. So her 10-year idea, that's more accurate. It's not COVID. In part, as one student told her, an increased fear of judgment by peers or getting something wrong. I hear this all the time, and it's so much nonsense. Someone has convinced these teachers or whoever that suddenly today's teenagers are like perfectionists, that they want everything perfect. They think, they don't want to ruin their perfect GPA or something. That's the opposite of what young people are. Okay? Young people don't, it's not about being a fear of getting something wrong or like getting a low grade or anything like that. They don't care about that stuff at all. Trust me. What could be happening, this idea, I'll go along with this idea a little bit, give increased fear of judgment by peers or getting something wrong. You do have to wonder if, because these young people's lives have been completely kind of curated, they can curate their whole life to present the best image of themselves as often as possible, especially in the online world, which for them is their entire world. So to give her the benefit of the doubt here, if you're online and all my pictures are perfect and every tweet I write is perfectly crafted and, I can retouch my images as many times as I want, then yeah, being in a classroom where you get one chance to make an answer and you might sound silly, okay, I can see why that is very different for young people today. Again, they've done it to themselves, so I don't really have much sympathy for them. But, that's just part of building a classroom environment. You have to, you have to convince students that, look, whatever, just say whatever. Who cares? We're all going to forget about it tomorrow anyway. I mean, it doesn't matter if you get something wrong. So it just doesn't matter. And kids need to be way less uptight about it. But to think that our kids are like, oh, I really need to make sure everything's right. No. We know that because the data shows that kids study and prepare less than ever. So if they were so overly concerned about getting every answer right and presenting themselves well in class so that they were on top of it and looked smart to the teacher and wanted to do really well, we would see it in their study habits because they would be over preparing. We don't. The data is clear. Students do not spend extra time working and studying on their coursework, especially reading. So it's not that, oh, I'm scared of getting something wrong. No, that's not it. I don't know what teenagers are telling you that, but trust me, teachers out there, we do not suddenly have a generation of perfectionists, academically anyway. So get over that idea. Or, she adds, perhaps this mentality of, why should I think it through when I could get the answer on my phone? That is definitely part of it because students, again, because they haven't been taught properly at the younger levels, they don't see the value necessarily in trying to work through a difficult problem, hash out different ideas, have a little bit of a debate, wrestle with something really complex. Their answer to everything in life is, well, if you have a question, I'll just Google it and someone else will tell me the answer. So that could be, when you're a teacher and you're standing in front of a class asking questions and everyone's looking at you blank faces, it is possible that in their own mind, they're kind of going, why are you asking us this? Why don't we all just search on Google and find the answer? When they don't know that just giving an answer isn't the point of the exercise. So again, that kind of class discussion needs to be implemented better in the earlier years before they even get to college. Article continues, but another large question looms over this story and much of the thinking she has been doing in the last few years regarding teaching. Are college students struggling with reading more than they did previously? And if so, what should educators be doing to help them? The answer to that is yes. And let's see what ideas they have here. In recent years, Jones has increasingly adjusted her teaching style and syllabi to accommodate what she sees as a decline in students' reading ability. Her approach involves a constant dialogue with her classes. I'm not sure what that means, if that means her classes are primarily discussion-based. I guess that's what it means. I don't know what involves a constant dialogue means. This approach comes with some sacrifices, as Jones sees it, but those are ultimately overshadowed by benefits. I'd much rather discuss a short story by a certain author that is extremely dense but only 10 pages long and know that everyone has read the entire 10 pages so that we can talk about the whole work, she explains. I'd rather do that than teach a 300-page novel that maybe only one or two students will read entirely. All right, so there's a couple different problems going on here. One, she has a valid point that, kids are going to be more inclined if they're going to read it at all, which don't be surprised that they still don't. They will be more inclined perhaps to read 10 pages as opposed to a full novel. However, we have to be very careful of why we select certain pieces of text. If we're selecting text just because we think, well, this one's shorter, at least this one they'll read, that's not a good reason for choosing that text. If you're choosing that text because it's actually really, really good and it offers something unique that novel just doesn't, or it just fits better with your semester from a pacing standpoint, then sure, yeah, that's a great idea. If you're just choosing shorter materials because you're just trying to make things easier on the kids, that's not good. We pick texts because they're the most important texts, or because they illustrate some theme that we want to talk about with our students or something like that, or because, you only have so much time in a semester and you have to fit it in over the course of one class period or 1 week or 2 weeks or however long you have. And so you have to organize yourself that way. But let's be clear about this. Let's not start choosing low level or shorter texts just for the reason that, well, maybe they'll actually read it if I make it easier for them. That's not good. If the text is better, great. Shorten it all you want. That's fine. If it's valuable, do that. But don't start tossing away the full-length novels because the kids aren't reading them. There's other ways of addressing that problem. Let's see if they come up with some. This professor is far from alone. While some educators who speak with Teen Vogue say they have not seen a difference in students' willingness to read, several professors across higher education institutions disagree, echoing worries that peers have expressed online about drops in reading stamina and efficacy among today's undergraduates. There's a reference here to Adam Kotsko, who wrote a piece in Slate several months ago. Many people keep referring to that article. I've already talked about that piece in a previous podcast. So if you want more about Mr. Kotsko's ideas, you can definitely go back and watch my previous podcast on reading. But a quick little excerpt here. He does tell Teen Vogue that for years he assigned around 25 to 35 pages of reading per session in entry-level classes. But now, quote, "It seems like if I write down on my syllabus a 20-page reading, I start to get tense." All right, 25 to 35 pages is pretty normal. I've gone higher than that before. Depends on what you mean by entry level. If that means freshman, that's probably about right. Other literature courses, though, I usually assign between 50 and 70 pages per reading per session. So if we have class on Monday, I'll say, hey, okay, here's your reading assignment for Wednesday. I'll see you 2 days later. And that's, somewhere between 50 and 70 pages if we're reading a novel or something like that. So that's about right. The problem is with his quote here. Now, if I offer a 20-page reading, I start to get tense. Why are you getting tense? You're the boss. You're the leader of the class. You make the rules. If they don't do what you don't want them to do, that's no reason for you to get tense. You've explained what the requirements are. They could get tense because they don't want to do it. And if they don't do it, then you flunk their butts. It's not that hard. There's no reason for a professor to be worried. Oh, am I assigning too much reading? Is 20 pages too much? You're the expert. If you think 20 pages is the right amount for tomorrow or the next class period or whatever you're tackling, fine. You're in charge. You do what you think is right. I believe in teachers having the power of, kind of the general academic freedom mindset of not only being able to say, have an opinion on certain topics, but you can run your classroom. You're in charge. The kids came to you. So you set the parameters. There's no reason for you to get tense. If you want them to read 20, if you want to read 50, if you want to read 100 pages by tomorrow, assign it and hold them accountable. And if they don't, they don't. That's on them, especially at the college level. There's no excuse. Stop making excuses for them. As students return to campus this fall, some humanities professors are wondering whether their students' learning needs will differ from their counterparts 20, 10, or even 5 years ago. As a result, they are taking a harder look at some of their instructional practices. Yeah, like I said before, this has been going on a while, so definitely 10 years ago to 20 for sure. I was in college 25 years ago, and trust me, college is way different now. The students' attitudes towards college are way different now. Student skills back then were way better. It wasn't even just smart people. I was a good student and I had smart friends, but even my friends who weren't always the best students, they were very capable people and they could do the basic work. They had no problems with homework and reading and all that in college. So we are light years different from, like he said, like she wrote 20 years ago or so. One likely reason behind this trend is hardly a secret. As some states rush to ban phone use in schools, more than 70% of high school teachers call cell phones distracting students a major problem in classrooms, according to a Pew Research Center survey. This history professor at University of Virginia says that students are less eager to read, and they're certainly less eager to read academic writing. Digital technology and social media have taken a toll on attention spans, he said, adding, "I even feel it myself." That's true. We as older people and adults who are also in this technological environment, we certainly notice that it's harder to pay attention. But again, you're the boss. So what are they going to do about it? Let's see. Or as this English professor at Princeton puts it, all of us, the faculty, have noticed that students' attention spans have diminished. We've probably noticed that our own attention spans are under assault and diminishing, and clearly the reason for that is the kind of rapid consumption of media that's encouraged by having a phone in your pocket. Of course. Another professor of rhetoric and writing at UT Austin says it's hardly surprising that his colleagues are noticing a drop among today's students in their reading practices in the reading practices he and his peers grew up with. What's surprising, he notes, to be honest, is how few of my colleagues recognize that it's not really the student's fault. Right? Never trust people who say right after a sentence. They're interacting in media ecologies that we never did when we were growing up. Yeah, that's true. Their interaction with the world is different, but it's just a decision. That's all it is. I don't buy into this like trying to work with kids and integrate the technology with their learning, and I I don't believe that you're beholden to your silly addiction. I just don't. You make a choice. Put your phone away. Get to work. Do the reading. Do your homework. Stop making excuses. Oh, but they can't look away from their phone. You make them. Problem solved. Here's an example, okay? I understand that students struggle with having their phone out while they're doing their work. It's right there. It's very enticing to want to check, whatever updates you're getting or messages from friends. I get it. I'm the same way with snacks, okay? I know that about myself. I know that if I have snacks in the house, I like pastries. So if there's donuts around, if there's cookies, if there's cupcakes, something like that sweet. I like crunchy salties, if there's pretzels, popcorn, chips, whatever. If I have them around, it's inevitable that at some point during the day, I'm going to wander into the kitchen and go, I'm a little bit hungry. I'm a little snacky. Let's go see what we've got in the cupboard. I know that about myself. So when I am trying to be a little more health conscious and, be healthier and lose a few pounds if I need to or whatever, then I don't even bring them in the house. I literally don't even buy them at the store for however many weeks I'm on my plan. I do not, because I know I cannot integrate the snacks into my regular life. I can't do it. I don't have the portion control. All right. So what's my solution? It's not to, well, let's work on it and let's integrate it slowly and let's have these rewards set up. And nope, it's cold turkey. I don't have it in the house. And so then when I get snacky, I go, well, suck it up and get over it because I don't have anything anyway. So just ignore it and keep doing whatever I'm doing. So it's not. And after a while, you stop thinking about it because it's not in the house. So your brain doesn't even start wondering what you would want as a snack. It's done with. So the same thing with the phones or any other technologies. Students need to be cut off cold turkey. If they go back to their dorm room at night and they need to study, they need to have that phone somewhere completely in someone else's room for all I care, like somewhere else, so that they know I have zero access to my phone for the next 3 hours. So all I can do is sit here and do my homework and do my reading. That's it. So it's not, we keep like having this, I don't even know what it is, but we're just like so overly sympathetic with these kids that, well, it's not their fault. They have an addiction and all this stuff's like, no, I agree they have that, but it's not like we have to work with that. Tell them to stop. Parents out there, take it away. You shouldn't give it to them in the first place, but if they have one, take it away from them. Problem solved. I don't understand the confusion over this topic. Well, what do we do about their phones? You take them away. You take their iPads away, whatever their distraction is that is keeping them from doing their reading and focusing. You take it away. It's so simple. I'm baffled that parents and teachers can't figure that out. It's so stupid. I can't believe it. Take it away. Start prioritizing what's important. Reading is really important. So let's do that. So dumb. To some instructors, the notion of trimming syllabi or increasingly excerpting assigned reading feels like an insult to the intelligence of students, not to mention their tuition money. This professor at the University of Tulsa says she sees such moves by colleagues as a tyranny of low expectations. That is exactly right. Her quote continues, it's actually incredibly important that students just read a massive amount. Reading widely and deeply is incredibly important in terms of building the skills that are necessary no matter what you're going on to do. Yeah, tyranny of low expectations, that's exactly right. We go, well, like reducing your page numbers in your class. Well, they're not going to read it anyway, so I guess, I'll go from 20 pages down to 5 because at least they might do that. Why are you having such low expectations? You're the boss. You set the expectations. You're the university. You're the high school administrator. You're whatever. Whoever's in charge. You set it. You make the kids come up to it. And if they don't, you give them the boot. It's that easy. So she's right. Tyranny of low expectations. These kids have been coddled for so long. We think, oh, well, they just, they can't do it. They're under stress and they have all these distractions. Like, it's so stupid. No, it's not it. It's because you've lowered all your expectations and they've just gotten used to it. That's the problem. And so then when anyone comes along and says, no, you're going to read 100 pages by Wednesday, they panic and freak out like, no, I can't do that. That's why. It's because no one's been making them do that for the last 5 years. And as she said, it's a complete insult to your top students when you make everything lower or dumber or shorter or whatever it is. Because your good students, they're interested. They want to learn. They're up to the challenge. And so then when you have a class and you're like, well, I'll cut them some slack. The good students go, why? I'm willing to do it. I'm smart enough to handle it. Why are you making everything easy for all these kids? I put in the work. I study. I work hard. And you're cutting all these other dummies slack? That's not fair. And that's exactly right. So all of this is an insult to your good students. I've been at colleges that have done this, 2-year, 4-year, all sorts of colleges, where I've had countless smart, hardworking students come up to me at various points, either in a semester or after the semester's over, and they're like, they get mad at the school. It doesn't happen in my class because I make everyone meet my challenges. But when they go to other classes and they tell me about other teachers and other courses they've been in, and they're like, yeah, the teacher just like makes everything easier for everyone because they know they won't do it or they can't handle it, and they feel like they're not getting their money's worth. They don't feel challenged academically, but they also feel like they're not getting a quality education from a financial investment standpoint. So everything is a race to the bottom. Whether it's reading or anything else, it's all about accommodating the lowest, most apathetic students, and it's making everything worse. And yet we keep kind of trying to come up with ways to negotiate with this, and you just don't negotiate it with. You say, nope, here's what you do. If you don't want to do it, don't. At the same time, other educators point to the challenges many students face and urge colleagues to exhibit empathy in constructing their expectations. No. Another professor at University of Missouri, Kansas City, says that his experience teaching many first-generation college students and those juggling jobs and other personal responsibilities has shown him the importance of accommodating the reality of student lives outside the classroom. I think it comes down to priorities, he says. By giving them, say, 1 reading or 2 readings, they can be a little more deeply engaged with that reading for the week. If those 1 or 2 readings are really, really valuable and they're still meeting the standards of the course, then okay, fine. But if you're just making it easier on them because you're like, well, I know that kid, he has a job as well, and so he's not going to be able to get to the reading. No. Again, that's an insult to all the kids who, if they have things going on outside the classroom, do it anyway. Or even if they don't. College isn't about negotiating with kids in their personal schedules. They chose to be in college. They chose to be in class. If they don't want to be in college or be in class, don't be there. I don't understand why we're trying to negotiate with them. It's just so ridiculous. So, yeah, like I said, if you want to trim it down because you think that's really actually valuable, and this story or this excerpt is more valuable than reading this big giant piece, totally fine. Yeah, you gotta pick the best materials that fit the sequence and the scope of your course. But if you're doing it to try to exhibit empathy, like, no. Because again, you know who you're not being empathetic with? All the kids in your class who are just fine doing it because they know what to expect when they come to college. So it's so funny how we pick and choose who we're empathetic with. It's like, well, I feel empathetic toward the low-level student. Why don't you feel empathetic towards the high-level student? That kid's just as valuable as the other kid. He knew what he was getting into. He's willing to put in the work. He reads. You don't feel empathy towards him? That's not very fair. That's the whole point of treating everyone equally, is then you can have empathy for everyone, because then you can say, here's the standard. I'm treating all of you equally. Go to it. Done. Why are you picking and choosing who you're going to be empathetic towards? That's bad teaching. It's not even a you're not even being a good person when you do that. That's again, it's unfair to people. That's not right. I say some of that stuff because, you know, I've talked about this on one of my very first podcasts. I was one of the fortunate students, all right? I went to college for free. So I didn't have to worry about anything outside of class, even though I played sports. I had to worry about that. But I didn't have any other bills to pay. I didn't have any other responsibilities. So I could just focus on school. It was great. I was quite fortunate for that. My wife didn't. She had to work her whole time through college because she paid every single penny by herself. She didn't have her parents didn't help her pay for college. She didn't win any academic scholarships or anything. She paid every single penny of a private school education because that's what her beliefs system that school aligned with her belief system. And she paid for all of it by herself. She would work from 6 a.m. till 10 a.m. Then she would go to class in the middle of the day, and then she would work from 6 p.m. till 10 p.m. every single day for all of those years. She even did that in high school, adjusting some of those hours before high school. But she worked all the time, and yet somehow she was able to get all her stuff done. She was able to graduate and become a successful, career person. No one showed her empathy, and yet she figured it out. How come these other people can't figure it out? When you sign up for college, you know what you're getting into. You're like, well, I got to work to pay for it, and I'm gonna have to study, so I better get my schedule organized and get my hours planned out. And yeah, so that's what you do. It's not. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not complicated. Like, figure it out. And if you can't do it, that's fine. Maybe work for a while, save up a bunch of money, and then if you want to go to college and pay for it that way, fine. But if you're trying to do both and you can't do it, and the teacher has to, well, I won't make you read tonight. I won't make you do that assignment. You're ruining it for everyone. I don't get it. It remains to be seen whether there will be a widespread shift toward educators cutting down on assigned reading. In a range of syllabi from 2009 to this year, shared with Teen Vogue by various English departments, a couple universities, the volume of reading asked of students has remained largely comparable. Anecdotally, though, some professors say they are reworking the length of the texts they assign. Jones includes fewer books but more short stories for the same course than she did a decade prior. The two other people in the article both mentioned being more selective and intentional about what they include on their reading lists. That's fine. Yeah, you should be intentional. That's part of what your job as the expert in that field is you have the intention of choosing the right stuff. So if that's why you're doing it, for more, for better texts, okay, awesome. Don't do it because it's shorter. Whether or not professors choose to change the syllabi themselves, they are facing a host of decisions in building out workable strategies to support their classes in reaching the reading goals they set for them. One person says, if you want students to be able to read a novel a week, then you're going to give them some kind of structure to be able to do so. Yeah, I mean, if I've had, where I have a novel that's, say, 240 pages, and I have them read 120 the first week, and then 120 the next week. You can break it in half. It's not that hard. In my novel class that I've taught before, I teach 8 novels in one semester, 16 weeks, 8 books. Now, some of them are quite short, but we also read Moby Dick in that course. That is a very big, complicated book. Well, we spend about a month of the semester reading just that book, and we read, 50 pages a night or whatever, or 50 pages a course session. So yeah, the way you structure it, you can still do it. It's not difficult, but yeah, it is intentional. You just have to, again, don't relax the standards. In my novel class where I choose those 8 books, I mix some shorter ones with some longer ones because again, I'm trying to fit them into a 16-week framework. But they're all excellent texts. I've chosen them for very specific reasons because they're great books, regardless of their length. I chose them because they're good books. That's what you do. What that structure looks like means many different things for different people. This person says that since 2020, right before the pandemic began, he has began putting students into reading teams, with each student choosing a couple of assigned readings for the week and providing their teammates with summaries. No, no. Why are you letting students off the hook? If you want them to read the material, make them read the material. Not a summary of the material, the material. So bad advice. He also uses digital annotation tools that enable students to comment online about the reading as they make their way through it and engage with comments from classmates. Again, that sounds interesting and I don't hate it, but it's the digital component that is the problem here. We just read about how kids are distracted. We know the data is completely clear that reading on screens is not as good as reading a hard copy text. And so then what do you do in your classroom? You point them to the screen. No, stop doing this. I know every teacher out there is trying to be trendy and hip, and I know it is very convenient because you can you're not talking to each other, but you're writing, comments and everyone can see it. And again, I don't hate that idea, but it also contradicts the very thing that you were having a problem with, which is comprehension and devoting time to text without getting distracted. When they're online, they're going to get distracted. And their reading isn't going to be as good because it's online. This other person asks students to take photos of their text annotations and submit those as assignments, an approach he says has been working quite well. Again, kind of a cool idea, and we should be having our students annotate their texts, obviously. But what, now as the teacher, I have to go and look at all their photos? What if I had them read Moby Dick and we're reading 70 pages that night? They should be annotating the whole way through. Am I going to read 70 pages of annotations for each student if I have 40 students in a class? That's insane. So why are you having them do this? Is it just a checkup on them? Because I don't really do that. When I say to do something, you do it. If you don't, there's going to be a consequence. I'm not your mom going around and checking your annotations. If I'm going to make an assignment out of it, like a quiz or a paper or something, that's how I will check to see whether you've done the work. But, again, I don't hate this idea of holding students accountable for annotating, I guess, or at least seeing how they're doing it. But now you're making more work for the teacher. That's not a good idea. Why would a teacher want to go along with that? Again, look at the accommodations we make, okay? I had this discussion at a university once. And I fought this tooth and nail, and ultimately some teachers did it. I was like, I refuse to do that. That idea is so stupid. There's no way I'm doing that. And we were trying to figure out how to deal with students' attendance. I was like, well, mark them absent. What's the problem here? And they were like, well, but when they're absent, they fall behind, and we really don't want our students falling behind. And I said, well, like all of us from years and years ago, if we knew we had to be absent because we were sick or traveling for some reason, it was my job to reach out to a classmate and say, hey, what did we do that in class that day? Can I get your notes? What's the reading ahead of time so that if I'm going to be gone, I can still keep up with the class reading? The student's responsible for that. And these teachers were saying, well, we'll have them do a makeup assignment that if they know they're going to be gone, this will keep them involved and hold them accountable and make sure they're not falling behind. And I'm like, so what? Now I have to spend time making an assignment for if students are absent. I have to write all that up, and I have to grade it. I have to chase them down to make sure they turn in something so that now I have something else to grade when I already grade thousands, literally, of pages of student work every single semester. Now I have to do this. And I was like, I'm not doing that. So this is what we're doing though. Students don't do the work. We tell them, do the work. They don't do it. And then we go, well, here's this other thing you can do. And then now the student has extra work to do, and now I have extra grading to do. How about you just do your job the very first time? When I tell you to do an assignment, you do it. And that's that. And if you don't, you flunk the class. Problem solved. We're bending over backwards to help every single kid with their various problems. That you're just making more work for yourselves, teachers. Stop doing that. Have a standard, stick to it, hold the line. It's not hard. Have a backbone. It's not hard. Make them do it. That's it. This other teacher encourages his classes to adopt an overview procedure for reading, understanding how the text is organized and skimming the text introduction and conclusion before diving into the core of it. Okay, so that's a decent idea, assuming the kids still read the whole thing. They might read the intro and conclusion and go, oh, I guess I know enough of it now. I don't need to read the rest. But that is a good technique, and that's something I do as well, especially for complicated texts, whether it's fiction like Shakespeare or something that's, it's admittedly a little difficult to get through from a language standpoint, or if it's, a highly academic text, maybe you're reading something that's some psychological study or something like that, that there's, a lot of complicated language or data in it or something. So what I do is I kind of give a movie trailer version of what it's about before they read it, so that they know what they're looking for, and they know they're not getting so bogged down in trying to decode the text that they forget what the meaning of it is. They know the meaning, and so that stands out to them as they read, and then they track better. So, I might say, if we're going to read Hamlet or something, instead of saying, here's Hamlet, go read for Monday, I say, okay, we're going to read this play. It's one of the greatest plays of all time. And it is about this prince who has, his father, the king, has been killed. And so the prince is really upset about it. And he doesn't know who did it. And he wants to find out. He thinks his own uncle might have killed his father. And now his uncle is acting like the king. And so when he suspects his uncle, he's going to try to figure out if he should seek revenge. Should he try to kill his own uncle? And, what happens to the kingdom if he tries to do, if he tries to take this action? Like give them the brief summary of what the story is about, like the plot, or if it's a research study, like say, here is the question that this researcher was trying to find out. He noticed this problem, and so he devised this study to try to figure out what was going on. So here is how the study went, and overall, he concluded that this is what was going on. But what's interesting about this text, and why we still need to read it, even though I've given you kind of the overview, is the data he came up with is really interesting, and so we're going to look at that for next class. So make sure you've read it. Well, that's how you introduce it. So that is a way to kind of prompt the students to get excited about the reading, and you even kind of give them the answers. You tell them what it's about. Generally, not specifics, so they still need to read for the specifics. But yeah, that idea is pretty good. The skimming the introduction and conclusion, again, assuming they also then go read the rest of it and don't think they're like, oh, I get it, I don't need to read the rest. This professor says he started making requirements for written assignments much more directive, designing questions to check whether the students made it through the entire text. Yep, you should do that. His assignments used to be much more open-ended. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Now he's thinking of leveling up from that. I'm very much considering going back to quizzes, even though I resented them as a student. Yeah, you resented them as a student because it holds you accountable. So yeah, that's all you have to do. I always have quizzes for my classes. Reading check quizzes have worked well in her classes, Jones says, the professor from the beginning of the essay, especially as students who do the reading feel grateful for the weekly chance to get an A. Exactly what I said before. The students who are good students, they feel grateful. They want to prove that they actually did it and get a reward by getting the points and the credit. So when you diminish that, you're actually harming those kids. That's not good. So reward the kids who deserve to be rewarded. One question this other person finds himself asking again and again of students struggling with assigned reading, do you turn off your phone? They usually respond with shock. And he empathizes. Why are you empathizing? Stop empathizing with these kids. After all, they didn't have phones to turn off. Yeah, but I had TV. I had other distractions. I wanted to go outside and play. I wanted to go to the gym and do other stuff. I had my friends who wanted to go out. Like, we all had distractions. Again, these teachers who think, oh, the world is totally different. Yeah, the phones are different. The technology is different, but kids are still kids. We're always distracted. It's nothing new. Stop pretending like we have to reinvent the wheel every single time with these kids. It's ridiculous. So the professor talks about the culture of attention and mindfulness that he wants to cultivate in his classes. Mindfulness. To him, that doesn't mean being unreasonable, but expecting students to commit to reading for 4 hours straight without once looking up. 4 hours, that's a long time. How about 20 minutes? That might be a good place to start, and then you practice building up to that. However, putting the phone in another room or leaving it at home when they go to the library can be a reasonable expectation. That's what I said before. and perhaps become a cultural norm to which students can hold one another. I don't mean to do that as a complete, you should change your life, he adds, but I do want students to have a feeling for what that can be like. So that's correct. The holding each other accountable kind of thing, I understand the value in that, and there are certain things that, maybe that's important, that you form groups that hold each other accountable. But when you teach students that, it also lets them off the hook, because their whole thing could be, well, I don't have a group to hold me accountable, so I guess I just can't do it. Instead of saying, no, you hold yourself accountable. That's what it means to be an adult. And you're at college, that means you're supposed to be an adult. So if you're so much of a child that you can't put your phone in another room or leave it at home when you run to the library, you're a child. Stop being a child. Grow up, take responsibility, be accountable to you, because you say you care about this stuff, right? You say you care about college and being successful and getting a good career or whatever your goals are. That's what you want, right? Well, be an adult so that you can do those things. Adults aren't distracted, responsible adults anyway, aren't distracted by their phones when they're trying to do serious work. So let's start practicing now. That's all you do. It's when you say, I don't mean that you have to change your life. Maybe you should change your life. Maybe that's the problem. Your life has gotten you to a point where you don't even read for class. That's not a good life. So maybe you should change it. So that's the message teachers need to send. Leave your phone at home or put it away so that you can focus. It's not hard. This person serves on the faculty of a nonprofit educational group dedicated to cultivating attention. I don't even know what that means. How do you have a whole group dedicated to cultivating attention? Finds value in working on these skills with and around others. Makes it easier if you're in a community. Yeah, as I said, but then you're just relying on your community instead of taking responsibility for yourself. So that's great if you have a community, but if you don't, doesn't mean you're off the hook. It means you're your own community. Solve the problem yourself and be responsible. Last paragraph. Similarly, this other speaker says, this person feels that the core ingredient in fostering a commitment to reading in her classes is creating a culture around the practice. That starts with professors actively helping students understand what's at stake. She says, the biggest problem that students have is a problem of imagination. They're just not sure how they can do this. You have to help them imagine themselves getting it done. No, that's not it. Creating the culture, yes, that is true. You have to create a culture in your classroom and at your university in general, that this is what we do. We read, we discuss, we have debates, we think deeply. That's the culture we build. The biggest problem that students have is a problem of imagination. No, their problem is they're lazy. They're distracted. They're dumb, some of them. Like they're not intelligent people, and yet somehow they're at college. It's not imagination. Their imagination, the problem is their imagination. Their imagination runs wild with all the other things they'd rather be doing than doing their homework. It's not a problem with imagination. That's so silly. You have to help them imagine themselves getting it done. No, you say, here's your assignment. Do it or you flunk. Now, if you want to go more intrinsic than that extrinsic motivation, yeah, you say, here's why this is really valuable. Reading Hamlet is going to not force you, entice you to want to struggle with the complexity of what it means to be a human being and understanding your identity based on the relationship to your family, based on your identity, based on who you are as an individual person who makes his or her own choices in the world, and that those choices can have dramatic consequences, life or death consequences even. This is a play that will help you wrestle with the notions of spirituality. Like, is there something that corrupts my soul when I think about causing harm to someone else or taking revenge on someone else? Is that acceptable? Or are there like metaphysical consequences to that? What does that do to my spirit if I have those thoughts? What kind of person can I become if I view the world from a standpoint of violence and retribution? Like that's in 10 seconds I can make a case that here are all the soul building ideas or reasons why you should read Hamlet. besides being one of the most interesting linguistic pieces that's ever been written in the English language. And that since you speak English and this is a class where we talk in English, like it's kind of important that you know some stuff about our language and where we've come from, and that you're part of the history of that beautiful language that Shakespeare wrote. You're carrying on the tradition. So let's enjoy that. Yeah, that's the culture that this professor is talking about. That's what you need to build in your classrooms. And if that doesn't work, you say, well, if you don't buy it, that what I'm selling, now maybe the F on your transcript will convince you to do your homework. I don't care what the reasoning is. Do the work. That's all it is. Do the assignment, do the reading, do the project, whatever that the homework is. That's all you have to do. So when we keep coming back to these reading problems, yeah, kids are bad readers today. And part of it is the technology. The technology has messed with our brains for sure. And yet we have parents out there handing their 3-year-olds an iPhone. They hand their 9-year-olds their own cell phones, and they give their kids their own laptops, and they say, oh, I can just Google all the answers. I don't need to study. Like, yeah, parents have created this. Teachers have supported the bad parenting by trying to accommodate all this stuff instead of holding your ground and saying, yeah, I know in your house you let your kids do that, but here at school we don't do that. So if you want your kid to be successful at this school, you might want to not have your kid on his iPad or cell phone all the time. Just a hint, if you care about your kid being academically successful. And then by the time they get to college, yeah, the kids make their own decisions. You're adults. If you can't handle this, don't be here. It's that easy. If you know what college is, because colleges should create the culture of what you're trying to do there from a reading and academic standpoint. If you're not enforcing that, then yeah, you're going to keep getting more of these kids who complain like, I don't want to read 20 pages tonight. Yeah, go somewhere else then. You don't have to be here. So I'm going to keep harping on this because until someone with a bigger platform than I have is able to convince teachers and parents across America, hey, dummies, stop bending your standards, stop diminishing your requirements for your classes, stop giving kids the easy way out, and force them to be great. Force them to care. Because if they don't, there's consequences, whatever you decide those to be. Until that becomes the culture shift, we're going to keep having these problems, and we're going to keep having our high school and college students continue to not be prepared for life, because that's what's happening. They can't read, they can't think, they can't write, they can't do much of anything, and then they go out into the working world, and all the bosses go, I thought you went to college. Why are you so bad at this? What's wrong with you? And the kid goes, but I got my degree. I don't understand. Aren't I qualified for this job? And they go, no, you don't have a clue of what you're doing. And then the kid gets mad, and we're like, yeah, because you didn't read. Why didn't you read? Because the teachers didn't make you. That's why. And your parents let you play around on a cell phone when you were 9. That's why. Or 12, or whatever the age is that kids are getting their phones. So yeah, it's all connected. And someone just has to make a choice that they're not going to do this anymore. That's the way we fix the reading problem, the homework problem, the studying problem, the competency problem. And that's when the culture starts to get better. So make the choice. That's all you got to do. All right. That's it. Thanks for listening. See you next time.